If you just keep holding somebody who is not a rationalist to a standard and saying, look, you've got this wrong, and you don't give them some mechanism to come back around, then
I will say that I generally do try to do that. Whenever, there's this term, I don't know if you know it, flipping the bit. Have you heard this before? You flip the bit on somebody. It's basically when you sort of like, okay, well, this person isn't really, they're lost. Like for all intents and purposes.
Oh, you're throwing them in a different. There's a bit that encodes which category they're in.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Right. So before I do that, I generally have tried. Again, the problem is with Twitter, there's no easy way to do context, right? And say like, okay, let me see the interactions between these two people over, a period of time. Even, with Sam Harris, that's famously made a career of going to podcasts and saying I'm a psychopath or whatever. If you see our early interactions,
in fairness to Sam, you had no right to put him in so much context.
I know. It was, but the thing is, if you actually go back to the beginning of the interaction, you'll see that my tone is very different because I try. And then, he took my initial thread, he commented on it, he named me in his podcast. I was just somebody from the crowd, right? He picked one thing that he felt he had a strong claim on, and he misrepresented it and then misanswered it, and then considered the whole thread dealt with. The thread that documented him slandering people, right? He finds one little claim that he feels is like, oh yeah, I'm going to hit him on that one wrongly, by the way, because he came at me on a information systems design question, not knowing that it's kind of what I do, but whatever. The point is, after that, I'm like, okay, this is kind of different, and then I engage again, maybe a little bit more sharp, and then I get the same thing back. I'm like, well, look, I don't want to be the person with a silky voice that, people just let everything go because, look how smoothly they engage. That's just not me. That's, even if I wanted to, let's face it. So I try the other thing where I'm like, okay, look, I'm just going to try. I'm going to try to engage. And if it doesn't work, then, I now know something that I feel I need to engage with, to actually like convey. And if I'm wrong, again, we're going back to the double click thing where you're like, people are going to be like, hey, are you sure you said it? And I was like, look over there, and are you sure he saw it? I'm like, he commented on it. Like he must have seen it. Right. So I'll say one more thing. And at the risk of sort of over broadening, one thing I learned during the pandemic is a pattern where people with large platforms, will make some claims that are false claims, some claims that are defamatory claims, right? They then when sort of well constructed response comes back, where it's like, okay, you said this is not true. Here's the evidence. Here's the receipts. Whatever. They will do the thing where they don't respond and they kind of run to their audience where they make some claims to to their home team and sort of just hope to get away with it. Like people with large audiences, you can trick yourself, right? Because hey, all of my followers are telling me I'm great, so it must be fine. And I think that has been toxic, right? That's probably what killed the IDW by my account.
It's been worse than toxic. It is also like an API that lets the propagandistic enemy capture people, right? In other words, to the extent that you are monitoring some audience that is large enough that you don't know who or what is in it, right? And you are using it as a guide for whether or not you've got things right, then something that wishes to steer you can do it with the equivalent of applause, right? I mean, I think Eric...
But it doesn't even, it's not even necessary, that's how it's going to happen regardless. I mean, sure, there's more surreptitious methods that can be employed, but I'm just saying the natural force is people who watch you because they like you and they have, some warm feelings about you. So if you ask them, was I right about this? They're probably going to say yes. And even if they don't agree with you, they're probably not going to say that. So you kind of feel like, okay, well, we're good. And really the fact that there wasn't a way to actually get people on a neutral basis to get together and discuss stuff, right? With some sort of neutral-ish like mediator if need be, but like without a platform advantage, right? So even when, with Scott Alexander, when I got into this very long conversation, how did it end? Like he picked out some things, he mixed up some others, sort of misstated some of my claims to his audience, and that was that. He responded, right? What am I going to do now? I can continue the conversation, but it's going to end the same way. So it's utterly frustrating from the point of view of the audience, right? I feel like I'm part of the audience, at least for now, to see that play out. And sometimes it comes out probably not in the best ways, but that's yeah. Look, I hear you, right? And it's not that I don't know that sometimes my tone is not what I would like it to be. But again, on balance, like whose is, right? And I don't want to be fake. And people should know that if they double click on stuff, we can go further. And I'm always like, my DMs are open, and I'm always open to talk to people.
Yeah.
So
look,
that's something else.
I think that's fair. I wish we lived in a world in which we all agreed that we are all enhanced greatly if we get to the truth or an approximation of it, whatever it may be, and that one cannot avoid a conflict, that it will result in embarrassment for whichever ones of us have thought something was true and then discovered it wasn't, but that there's a basic way that we deal with this. I wish we were all on board with the same agreement, and that you were therefore being understood to be doing what I understand you to be doing, right? Understood by others to be doing that, which is, right, like you are functioning like, an attorney in a system in which adversarial presentations are the mechanism through which the court achieves its end, right? And I think others are involved in different codes, none of which are stated, or very few of them have stated these codes, and so there's a conflict between them. But in any case, I would say, just from the point of view of actually getting to something that approximates the truth in some form that it is actually hearable by the maximum number of people, I would say a little bit of caution in how one presents is going to pay large dividends. Right. Actually, let me give you one example. And believe me, as you know, I have every reason not to be particularly inclined to defending Sam Harris. I did think there was something instructive, though, in what went down with the clips of Sam that you put out, Sam's reaction to them, the public's reaction to them. There was one thing in which he, I think in several different clips, alluded to dead children. Right. And it became interesting. Like, oh, Sam Harris has a dead children tick in some of the things he said. And I looked very carefully at those clips, and I know Sam not terribly well, but well enough. And I'm convinced that what happened is that Sam uses dead children as his own, it's like a personal trolley problem formulation. Right? His point is, I'm going to set that slider to maximum. Even if this involved dead children, then X still holds, right? That is not about Sam really being comfortable with dead children. In fact, the opposite. It's about him recognizing that that would be the maximum bad thing, and that if you just set that parameter to maximum, it X, Y, and Z. But it still evidences, even if you understand that Sam is just using like a philosophy trick in order to get somewhere, the conclusion is still jaw-dropping, right? Even if Hunter Biden had dead children in his basement, I would still X, Y, and Z. Right. That is in and of itself disturbing, right? That it wouldn't cause you to rethink, even just the fact of, a president or would-be president having a son with dead children in his basement. Does the would-be president know that there are dead children in the basement? Would that not disturb you? Right? The point is...
Or if it didn't, wouldn't that disturb you?
Right.
Like it's no.
Any normal person would be caused to rethink, pull out a fresh sheet of paper, and reevaluate whether or not their feelings about Joe Biden were the same if they discovered that Hunter Biden had dead children in his basement, having nothing to do with your comfort with dead children, right? So Sam did reveal a gaping defect in his model or his character or both, right? You revealed it by putting together a large clip. It's not like you took them out of context, right?
2 minutes and 20 seconds. And whenever I cut clips, by the way, I know what algorithm I'm running, because that's how I do it. If people want to, first of all, nobody has ever said, "Oh yeah, I went and listened to the whole thing and it's better." Usually I hear, "I went and listened to the whole thing and it's worse." But see where I made the cuts. See if that is a reasonable place to make the cuts, because Sam Harris, again, and Konstantin Kisin, unfortunately, now has taken the same plot point. And they're saying, "Oh, well, these deceptive clips." Okay, well, how would you clip it? Secondly, on that tweet, I did not mention the dead children. In that tweet, that was not my focus. Right after that, and after I've been sort of, flatly, with no right of response or anything like that, right? Flatly, across platforms that have millions and millions of people keep calling. I mean, Kisin went on Viva Barnes, which is a podcast I really like, and he just called me a piece of shit with no prompting. He just offered that up, right? About my clipping. No, let me just complete this point, right? After all of that, right? I saw this other one, and really, again, that was a sequence of clips. There was one particular tweet where I'm like, all right, what is it? I mean, you've been taken to task about this. Just, can you stop? Because I know what you mean, and I actually partially agree. I think what he is doing is an extreme of a slider, but the slider is not emotional resonance to Sam. It is emotional resonance to other people. And he actually, if you hear the other argument that kind of went viral as well, he said, well, if it had killed children, people would have complied. Meaning, if the impact was the same in terms of deaths, but it was children, which, the normies kind of get moved by, then people would have complied. And that is the thrust of that argument. And first of all, that is ridiculous. Just let's take the clinical quality adjusted life years. They are non-comparable. Okay? An 85-year-old and a 5-year-old are just different things. Secondly,
different things for multiple reasons.
I mean, we can't really even begin. I don't know what's happened to Sam Harris. I think he's a lot better than that. He's perfectly competent of understanding why that is a terrible argument to bring up, why that is a terrible argument to bring up that way. Regardless, I did my own analysis of that argument. I'm like, but ultimately, right, my Twitter page is my log where people can read my thoughts in the context that I write them. And will some tweet go viral? I mean, I don't know which tweets go viral. Honestly, the tweets I want to go viral don't, and the tweets I don't do. Right. So I don't control that. I just say what I think. And yeah, I do think hey, if you've gone into hot water for that, just don't do that anymore. But I do think he does it because he's trying to throw out a very bright light to sort of confuse. It's a confusing tactic, unfortunately. And I don't like to say that people are doing something surreptitious or whatever, but I've run it through my head in many, many ways. I can't come up with a better hypothesis than it is a thing that is supposed to cause an emotional reaction in the listener, not that Sam himself is particularly. I mean, look, I know he loves his children. I know that he doesn't want children to die or anything like that. Let's get that out of the way. But the use in argumentation is its function, at the very least, is such as to distract from the logical structure of the argument being made. And if you do a formal analysis, which I have done, you just it doesn't add anything at all. It just you're just like, why would you do that? Why would you bring that up?
It's worse than that, because
of course,
yeah, I know it's worse than that. That is a very useful phrase, unfortunately, but it's worse than that because the very authorities and policies that Sam ended up defending put actual children in danger that they did not need to be exposed to. And Sam went after those of us who tried to get in the way and protect children. So to the extent that normies and Sam himself believe that children deserve some special protection, and that is why their deaths would be particularly horrifying to people, then the point is this should have resulted in Sam, at the point that he knew that these policies made no sense, right? At the point he realized, oh God, actually there is a problem with this vaccine, enough that I don't want any more of it, and that it shouldn't have been given to children, and especially male children who experience a greater risk of myocarditis, right? That should have caused him to go back and think, oh, not only have I been on the wrong side of that issue, but I've actually gone after people who were on the right side. I've said nasty things about people who were trying to prevent this, and actually, that should have forced him to an apology that I have yet to hear.